Are you pissed off? Do you feel like you're about to explode? I'm not even going to tell you to go take a walk or even to calm down. What I am going to tell you is to start accepting your anger. Learn how to let it run its course in a safe way for you, everyone around you, even random people on the internet. But first, you must understand it and you must allow it. You have to allow it. You must learn to hear what your anger is telling you. Hi, my name is April. Welcome back to Atypical Understanding, where we dive into the things that make us and others tick. We share our journeys and what we are learning about how to improve our lives and become the change we want to see and have in the world and the impact that we crave. Today's video is about anger and how we get started using our anger to improve our life. So taking a walk, counting to 10, these are great things to do, but not if they're only being used as a distraction technique. So in the long run, if you're using just distraction techniques, it's only going to cause your anger to keep building on itself. You're going to keep pushing it down and distracting, but it's going to keep building up because it's trying to tell you something. And you will likely become more and more explosive until you're able to find some release, which in my experience usually comes at the expense of someone who didn't really deserve it. And then you kind of stuck in this guilt shame cycle because of it, and it will only make you feel worse and probably exacerbate the anger even more. So what do we do with anger? I've been struggling with this question for years. I found a little relief when I stumbled upon some information that anger is usually a masking emotion and that the root cause is either fear or sadness. Sometimes I found that really helped me when I found myself getting angry. I could ask myself, what am I afraid of right now? And it would turn out that I was afraid of something, and then I could address the fear instead of blowing up and lashing out. As it turns out, I think anger is more complex than just fear and sadness, but we're going to go through some of these contributing emotions today. But the truth about anger is that it serves a purpose. And when we deny our anger, when we deny the feeling that causes the anger, we're ignoring the message it's trying to send. When we ignore the message, we never address the problem, and most likely we end up in the same situation over and over again until we suddenly can't take it anymore. We lose our cool. What happens next is even worse. As we wallow in our guilt and shame over the inappropriate reaction, the people who were there to bear witness to our angry outbursts often suddenly become morally superior to us or even afraid of us, even when in many cases they may share a portion of the responsibility for the cycle. Oh, it's so frustrating. That's the real problem with anger, and in my opinion, why as a society we don't like it, because it causes people to lash out. It causes people to get hurt. It is scary for others to witness. It is scary for the angry person to comprehend, especially when you don't know what to do with it. So today, let's start figuring out how to break the cycle. And for me, the most amazing work that I have ever done towards this is emotion will work, and figuring out what the anger is actually trying to tell me. And then when you know what messages, then it starts to become your responsibility to make an effort to address some of the situations that you find yourself in that are causing a response that leaves you feeling inferior or out of control. In the last two videos, I talked about the emotion wheel as a whole. This video is dedicated simply to the anger section, and the wheels that I'm using are a wheel from Jeffrey Roberts, and the wheel that I will show you is a wheel from Dr. Albert Wong, who has granted permission for anyone to use. So let's start breaking down anger. One of the tricks that I use when I'm doing emotional will work is to look up definitions and synonyms and antonyms. So first I'll go to the will and I'll kind of pick the emotions that resonate with me. I talk a lot about this in the first video. So I pick something that causes a spark in me. I can usually just kind of feel it. It resonates, it feels something when I read them, and then I kind of look them up and I'll ask questions about what I find. I'm going to illustrate this by going through all of the anger emotions on the two wheels that I talked about. And we're going to define those together, and you're going to kind of see how this works. So maybe you'll be able to do it on your own. I used Merriam-Webster online for all of these definitions if you're curious. I did have to change the form of the words at times. For example, angry may have had to become anger for me to get like a good definition, but here we go. Angry is painfully inflamed. I mean, to excite, to excessive or uncontrollable action or feeling. I feel like the definition of inflamed sounds more like what we're feeling when we feel angry. Uncontrollable, excessive, action or feeling, like I like that. That feels angry to me. then we have all of these emotions, feelings. Now we're going to go into like the emotions, the feelings and subcategories to choose from the wheel. Let down is a slackening of effort. Disappoint, to fail to support. So if you're feeling angry, you may in fact be feeling let down. How many of us don't even admit when we were let down by others? How many times did you think that someone should have gotten you a gift for your birthday and they didn't, they just forgot it altogether? And you now have a choice here. When you realize that you feel let down, you can mention it to the other person. You can realize that this is a pattern of behavior for the other person, and maybe you should think about ending the relationship. This person may be a narcissist. You may not want to talk about this with them right yet, but this will really help you be a guide. You can start to manage your expectations in this relationship. You can talk to your therapist about it. But just by labeling what you are and what you feel, it brings so much more clarity. You are no longer just angry. I'm uncontrollably angry. I don't know why. But you're let down. I'm angry because I'm let down. It's so much more powerful. Close your eyes for a minute and imagine that you are let down. What does that feel like to you? For me, it's a little bit sad. Like let down. Yeah, I just immediately slump. My shoulders slump a bit, my eyes go down. I feel generally just heavier. Now imagine that you're angry. Like that feels so much different to me. It's very different. So like I'm angry up here. And when we lash out at people in a defensive or aggressive manner, you tend to get bigger. Like when I'm angry, I'm bigger. I want to make myself bigger. So when we confuse these things, let down versus angry, when we confuse that and we lash out people in this defensive or an aggressive manner, it just really confuses the situation for this emotion. It makes it really hard to be clear with the other person. So if you feel let down by someone and in that moment you say, I feel let down, you forgot my birthday, that very clearly puts the ball in their court. It very clearly sets an expectation. It is something that they can respond to and feel bad about if they're, good people, because they were wrong. They forgot your birthday. When you lash out in anger at them, then suddenly it becomes a fight, and you will ultimately end up being wrong because your argument doesn't make sense. You aren't going to be clear. They're not going to know why you're mad at them because you're not clear that you're let down. You're not clear that you're let down because they forgot your birthday, but you're going to hold it in and you're going to explode over something completely unrelated. It isn't clear why you're so upset that I forgot to grab you a candy bar from the store, because you aren't really mad about the candy bar. You're mad about the birthday. You're mad about the anniversary. The please pick up a candy bar was just what happened today. The hundreds of times, you're mad about the hundreds of times your needs were neglected or ignored, and that's what you're mad about. Or worse, you blow up on someone completely unrelated to the situation because they ignored one of your needs, and you suddenly are so tired of feeling let down by everyone that gets you all the time. I hope you're able to follow along with this illustration. I won't go into everyone like that, but I just wanted to play it out for you. So if you aren't convinced of why you need to properly label your emotions, maybe that will help. Okay, so let's talk about the rest of these emotions. Betrayed, treacherously abandoned, deserted, or mistreated. I usually think of betrayal as the opposite of loyalty, but this feels different. Treacherously abandoned, deserted, or mistreated. That feels different than the opposite of loyalty. So what about betray? Let's keep going. This one led to astray. So if you feel betrayed, you may be feeling like someone purposely led you astray. Do you? Do you feel duped? Do you feel gaslighted? I don't know. I mean, that's a good question to ask. Resentful, a feeling of indignant displeasure or persistent ill will at something regarded as a wrong, insult, or injury. Begrudge, to give or concede reluctantly with displeasure. So resentful has this feeling of reluctance to it. I think I feel like that. You have to do something that you don't really want to do. Humiliated. I really found some insight into this one by looking at the definition. Humiliated, to reduce someone to a lower position in one's own eyes or others' eyes, to make someone ashamed or embarrassed. And then it said mortify. Mortify got really interesting because mort means death in Latin, so it was very interesting that humiliate is a synonym with mortify, which means to make dead. I mean, what? That really, I went on a little trip here. So I looked at mortify, and that means to subdue or deaden the body. especially by abstinence or self-inflicted pain or discomfort. So if we feel mortified or humiliated, or if someone does this to us, or we do it to ourselves, we're deadening ourselves. We are humbling ourselves. I mean, I feel like the majority of people who are in the business of self-humbling are not the ones who need it. Just saying. So we're making ourselves less relevant, and we're making ourselves uncomfortable. Humiliating. I feel like humiliating others is pretty commonplace practice with practical jokes, sarcasm, just really mean behavior in general. It's something that I don't feel like we're allowed to take that seriously when people humiliate us, because if we do, then we don't have a sense of humor. But to see it so closely related to death verbally, maybe we shouldn't have such a cavalier attitude about humiliating ourselves or others. You may also be tempted to think that humor and humiliation are closely related. It comes from Latin humilis, which I have no idea how to pronounce that, which means to humble, and humor, which means humere, which means moisture. So humiliating people is not humorous. Let's change that. Disrespected, to lack special regard or respect for, to show or express disregard or contempt. I feel like most of us are really familiar with feeling disrespected, but we should explore that. Is someone else making us feel that way, or are we doing it ourselves by continuously associating with people or habits or thoughts that don't hold ourselves in high esteem? Are you practicing low self-esteem by allowing yourself to be disrespected or disrespecting yourself? I looked up antonyms. If we are not treating yourself with the following, or if others aren't treating you with the following, maybe we need to make some changes, have some conversations. Do we need to explore this a little bit? So the opposite of disrespect is civility, considerateness, consideration, courtesy, gentilness, gentility, graciousness, politeness, thoughtfulness. How good did those words feel when you said them? Like, how good did that feel? Thoughtfulness. Do you treat yourself this way? Do others treat you this way? Do you treat others this way? Because you can't expect people to treat you kindly if you are disrespectful to them. And this is really important. A lot of times we delude ourselves into thinking that we're respectful to other people when we're not. So this might be a tricky thing for you to kind of figure out, but it's a really important question to answer. Ridiculed. Derision, mockery, deride, to subject to usually bitter or contemptuous ridicule or criticism. Once again, something that people often do that's passed as humor, which makes us feel that we're unable to respond with the appropriate response. To be angry. I can't be angry with you because you were just being funny. Bitter, distasteful, or distressing. I usually associate bitterness with jealousy. I don't know. Does anyone else? Because I don't see that really implied in that definition, but I just do. I don't know. I also felt that my mouth kind of pursed. Bitter. Feel it right there in the front. And I think that could be a clue. If you're trying to figure out how you feel and you're kind of pursing your mouth like that, you may think about bitterness. Violated. To break, disregard. This one is really related to boundaries or rules that we have about ourselves, or rules that we share as a culture or a society. It's often how people feel after being the victim of a crime. But if it's a recurring emotion, a good question is, if we find ourselves feeling violated, the question would be, what rule or boundary was broken? Was it clearly defined in the first place? If this is a situation that is recurring, is there something we could do to set the boundary a little more clearly? Do we need to re-explain it? Are there consequences? This is really important, because if there are no consequences for breaking your boundaries, there's really no boundary there. Think about that for a minute. If that doesn't immediately make sense, think about that though. Like, if there are no consequences, that doesn't matter if you had a boundary or not. Mad, intensely angry or displeased. So the interesting thing here is that madness is also a term people have used for mental illness. I don't think like appropriately, but I feel like I use mad more often on the less intense end of the anger spectrum, but maybe I've been using it incorrectly. I don't know. Tell me, how do you think? Seeing that it says it's literally, the definition is intensely angry. I mean, how do you see mad? More intense or less intense? In my mind, I just keep thinking, you mad, bro? You mad, bro? So yeah. I don't know. It just seems kind of silly to me almost. But furious, that's intense. Now, if you want an intense anger, furious. Proceeding from anger is the definition. Giving a stormy or turbulent appearance marked by noise, excitement, or activity. That's a really good description of what I feel like furious feels like. Just waves on a sea, you know, turbulent. Yeah, furious. Jealous, hostile toward a rival or one believed to enjoy an advantage. Envy, painful or resentful awareness of an advantage enjoyed by another, joined with a desire to possess the same advantage. I think I like the definition of envy a little bit better because we're joined with the desire to possess the same advantage. Jealousy can tell us a lot about what we want and what's important to us. I highly suggest if you feel jealous, this is a great one. You should figure out exactly what it is. For example, you might be jealous that your friend has new shoes. A lot of times we make that face when we're jealous. Even if it's in our head, we're like. But you might be jealous about your friend's new shoes that you don't even like the shoes. So it doesn't make sense. But it does. Because maybe it's not the shoes. Maybe it's that your friend has the money to go get new shoes and you don't. But maybe your friend works 2 jobs and you only work 1, and maybe you don't want to work 2 jobs to buy shoes because you have another hobby that you like to do. Maybe you're not jealous at all at the end of it once you figure it out. But that's such a silly example, but you've started to identify things that are important to you and things that aren't. In that case, you know, your hobby or your time is more important than the new shoes. So, you know, it's important. There are times that people do seem to have an unfair advantage over us in certain circumstances, and you know, I mean, I'm sure that like it really exists sometimes, and that's okay because there's almost always a trade-off somewhere, whether you can see it or not. But that's a whole nother tangent. But that's a tangent, and you know, that's a different story. Okay, so there are so many more words to go through, so I think that I will save the rest for a second video on this topic. I will schedule it for next week. Right now, my upload day is probably going to be Saturday or Sunday of every week. Please let me know if you have any thoughts or personal stories or how you feel about any of these words. Do you see them in a similar way, or do you feel kind of differently about them? And yeah, so thank you so much, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!